Welcome everyone to the February 22nd, 2021 meeting of Planning and Development. We have a quorum. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Johanna, can you call the roll? Oh, before that, Alderman Wilson, do we need to make that motion regarding operating under Zoom?
Sure. I move that we suspend the rules to allow us to conduct the meeting utilizing the Zoom video conference software in lieu of an in-person meeting and in conformance with the governor's prior directives related to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Second. Ms. Nyden, could you call the roll?
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Alderman Simmons? Alderman Sufferton?
Aye.
Alderman Ravel?
Aye.
Alderman Rainey?
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen?
Aye. All right. So we do have a quorum, and the first item would be, do we have any public comments?
Alderman Nguyen, you need to do the minutes first.
Oh, thank you. Would someone like to make a motion with respect to the minutes?
I move approval of the minutes. Second.
Ms. Nyden, could you call the roll, please?
Alderman Nguyen?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton?
Aye.
Alderman Ravel?
Aye.
Alderman Rainey?
Aye.
Okay, minutes are approved. Next, we'll go to public comment. Who do we have on public comment?
We have 3 individuals signed up for public comment.
All right, who's first?
We have Tina Payton, Sue Lolbach, and Carla Sutton.
Okay, Ms. Payton, are you with us? Would you, and if you are, would you please go forward?
Yes, hi, good evening, everyone. Hope everyone is well. Okay, I wanted to talk about the P1, the $175,000 from IDA for low-income rehab. So I will assume that Ms. Flax will talk about it further in the meeting. I would like to know, how does one apply? And I read over the who was going to get some, or the money was going to be used for acquisition, rehabilitation, demolition, tree, shrub, and debris removal, grass cutting, and lot treatment. So I have property that is in a low-income area, and I would be very interested. Many of the programs that have come out already, I have not been able to acquire any funding for the low-income housing, and I'm hoping that this 175 will be available for small landlords that provide low-income housing. And I hope that the woman on Jackson and Emerson does not get all of the money. I provide housing for many years, and I would appreciate that this will be available for the small landlords, because many of us have not received any money or any help during this pandemic. Thank you, and Black Lives Matter.
Thank you, Ms. Payton. Johanna, you said Sue Lolbach is next?
Sue Lolbach and then Carla Sutton.
Hi, Sue.
Hi, good to see everybody. I'm Sue Lolbach. I work at Connections for the Homeless and lead a coalition called Joining Forces for Affordable Housing. Joining Forces supports the ordinance proposed tonight in P4 to establish a definition and use of land for efficiency homes. We believe that in order to increase the equity with which housing decisions are made and housing resources allocated, Evanston zoning needs to be changed to allow flexible use of the municipality's land to create lower priced housing whenever possible. By allowing small and oddly shaped lots to be used for residential purposes, this ordinance will give this city a way to contribute some of its land for use as potentially affordable housing and will certainly allow greater flexibility for development of these lots, whether they're owned by the city or not. We thank the city for considering this proposal and hope you will approve it. We also hope that it will be followed by some proposals on how to ensure that these smaller homes will actually be affordable through building subsidies or some other mechanism. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Lolbach. Finally, I believe it's Carlos Sutton.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Good evening.
Good evening.
Okay. I want to thank you for giving this opportunity, and we just want to reinforce the comments made by Miss Payton. And secondly, I would like to ask the people that are meeting to have some kind of program that's available to landlords that does not require them to receive assistance if only the tenants apply for assistance. This has been a very, very large increase in our property taxes. We cannot get evictions. We have a lot of harassment from city inspectors. We need help, and we need it now. And we need a program that will specifically set aside small landlords to recoup some of the losses that they've suffered over the last year. And secondly, we do not need to be adding with NECA to a snowplow policy. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Sutton. All right, next we have item P1. I'll read that into it. It's P1 is Resolution 24R21, accepting a grant from the Illinois Housing Development Authority's Strong Communities Program. Staff recommends City Council adopt this resolution which provides us with $175,000 to address affordable housing needs and community revitalization efforts. I move approval.
Second.
Second.
All right, everyone. Discussion?
Let's get it.
Alderman Wilson?
Thank you. I don't know if Ms. Flax is here to make any kind of presentation, or somebody else is to make. Hi.
Yes, he's here.
Good to see you. But my impression was this is going to be primarily focused on restoring vacant properties, as opposed to landlords who have existing properties that they're renting out. But maybe you can kind of cover some of that, so the landlords who are here know what this is for. But maybe we can collectively reassure them that we're thinking about their plight and their issues and trying to get other funding from other places.
Go ahead, Sarah.
Okay, thank you. Sarah Flax, Housing and Grants Manager. Thank you, Chair Wynn and members of the committee. This grant, even though it has a rather grandiose name of Strong Communities, is really very much like the Abandoned Properties Grant, which we have been receiving in the past, which is exactly what Alderman Wilson was talking about. It is to take care of properties that are vacant and are really dragging down the neighborhoods that they're in. There are a number of requirements to be considered an eligible property. The property cannot be occupied by lawful or unlawful occupants, and or it can be an incomplete structure, so that it can't even be occupied because it's not in good enough shape. But it is not money, unfortunately, that we can use to help landlords who need to maintain their properties. The interesting thing is that really the biggest difference between this and the Abandoned Properties Program is that you can use some funds, very small, up to $5,000 per property, to be used for acquisition, which is really limited to doing things like paying some of the legal fees and things like that, tracking down, getting title searches so you can actually figure out whose property is and that sort of thing. So it's not, the paragraph that we put in as the description is actually IDA's description of their program. So it it is something that enables us to do property maintenance so that we can do some of the care of these properties that are dragging down neighborhoods, but it really is not something that can help our landlords. And we have a 2-year period over which to expend this. And it is something that we are paid only on a reimbursement basis after we have done the work.
Okay. Alderman Ravel, you had a question?
Yeah, I was just wondering, so do we have some properties in mind that are good candidates for this program?
We provided a list of properties that are ones that qualify, and some of them are properties that we have been maintaining. I don't have that list with me, but they are properties generally that are on the vacant property registry, and ones that we are really working on trying to keep from negatively impacting the neighborhood.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? All right. This is a resolution. So Ms. Nyden, would you call the roll, please?
Alderman Smith.
Yes.
I'm calling the roll. Yay or nay?
Yes, yeah, yay.
Alderman Nguyen.
Yes.
You just skip
Alderman
over.
Wilson.
Oh, are we in P&D?
Yes, we're in P&D, Peter.
Sorry, I heard you say city council. Okay, no.
Alderman Wilson.
Aye.
Alderman Rusimmons. Alderman Suffredin. Okay. Alderman Ravel.
Aye.
Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Okay, motion passes.
All right. Okay, well, now let's move on to P2, is ordinance 12021, granting a major adjustment to a planned development located at 811 Emerson Street. Staff and the Plan Commission recommend City Council adopt this ordinance and approve a major adjustment to a planned development at 811 Emerson, which was originally approved as ordinance number 37017. The applicant seeks to reduce the required off-street parking from 174 to 170 due to necessary construction modifications, and then make 50% of those parking spaces, 85 parking spaces, available for public use. Should the adjustment be approved, the following conditions are recommended. 1, that the building residents not be eligible for on-street parking permits. And 2, that the applicant provide the city with building vehicle ownership data on an annual basis to ensure that the building resident demand for parking is met and reserve the right of the city to require an increase in the number of parking spaces available for residents. This is for introduction.
Second.
Okay. Any discussion? Did the staff have anything they wanted to comment upon?
No comments from staff. I believe Vic Howell from Focus is on if you have any questions for the applicant.
All right. Does anyone have any questions? Alderman Ravel.
So the Plan Commission minutes talked about that I think they saw some actual parking lease documents, which I don't think we have, because I'm just wondering, the October parking study talked about on that one Thursday morning that there were 96 vehicles in the parking structure. I'm just want to make sure that we're not reducing the number to be provided too significantly.
Yeah, absolutely. I can speak to that. Thank
Go
you.
right ahead.
The parking study was done, as you mentioned, on October 1st, which was a Thursday, through that weekend, through the Sunday of that weekend. That also happened to be the building fully stabilized in September of that year. So then October 1st was actually the first move-in day for the largest capacity of residents moving into the building. So we found obviously that there were a lot more cars in and out of the garage. There was less policing at that time, a lot of people assisting with move-ins, and typically or primarily on the floor that is not secured parking for residents. But we noticed, obviously, as you get through the weekend, those kind of trail off, and by Saturday and Sunday, we're well below that sort of an 85 number as that capacity. So we see that as probably the max that we would get for additional vehicles outside of residents coming into the building. And of course, if this were made to be public parking, we would require any outside vehicles to pay for that parking. So we see it as an anomaly, but it does give us a sense of the scale of how many vehicles would use the space, even on the probably busiest weekend for the residents of the building.
Okay. Alderman Fisk?
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. I just want to point the committee's attention to the fact that this is a very unusual intersection. When we have students moving into campus, normally we've had a problem with parents and other people parking on Emerson, double parking and unloading. And actually, it seems now that they're using this building and using the parking in the building, which is helpful and which I think speaks to that anomaly. So the other benefit to this is that it's a very heavily parked area, and it's going to provide some off-street parking to residents who live in the area who may live in a vintage building that has absolutely no parking at all. So I see this as a benefit to the community. I hope it works out that way, and with the best of intentions and continued conversation, I look forward to supporting this.
Okay. Any other questions or comments? All right, Ms. Nyden, would you please call the roll?
Alderman Fisk,
Yes, aye.
Alderman Nguyen,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin,
Aye.
Alderman Ravel,
Aye.
Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Motion passes.
Excellent. All right, let's move on to P3, which is Ordinance 11-021, extending the time for the applicant to obtain a building permit for 910 to 938 Custer Avenue. The staff recommends City Council adoption of this ordinance to extend the time frame for the commencement of construction of the planned development at 910 to 938 Custer Avenue, originally approved on April 8th, 2019, and previously granted a one-year extension to April 13th, 2021. The ordinance would grant an extension of 18 months for a building permit to be issued and construction to begin. No other changes to the existing plan development are proposed. I'll move introduction.
Second.
Alderman Wilson, did you have your hand up?
I did. Just a reminder, my understanding is this is largely related to the fact that the principal of the development team had passed away. So obviously there's some delays in conjunction with that. So very sad that had happened, and hopefully they'll get everything situated and back on track.
All right. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? All right. Ms. Nyden, would you call the roll?
Alderman Fisk,
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen,
Aye.
Alderman Wilson,
Aye.
Alderman Suffredin,
Aye.
Alderman Ravel,
Aye.
and Alderman Rainey.
Aye.
Motion passes.
All right. The last item on our agenda is ordinance P4 ordinance 13021, a zoning text amendment to permit the establishment and regulation of efficiency homes. Plan Commission and staff recommend the council adopt this ordinance, a zoning text amendment to permit the establishment and regulation of efficiency homes. This establishes a definition for efficiency homes, which we all know as tiny homes, and establishes regulations for their construction and use within residential districts. Alderman Fisk, I believe you no longer are requesting the suspension of the rules. Is that correct?
Yes, that's right, Madam Chair. I think we've got some more discussion that needs to go on about this item. So I'm withdrawing my suggestion that we suspend the rules.
All right, so then would you like to just move introduction?
Yes, I will move introduction.
Second.
Okay, all right. And now let's open this up for discussion. Who would like to go first? Alderman Wilson.
I'm just glad that we're doing this and getting getting some alternative solutions to some of these both housing and property use challenges addressed. So grateful to the staff and everybody else who worked on this. Appreciate it.
Mhm. Alderman Fisk?
Yes, and I'm very much in support of this as well. But I think the concerns that have come up are with the side yard setbacks and how a 3-foot side yard setback might impact an adjacent property owner, for example, and what we can do to ensure that there's a conversation that's going on with, again, adjacent property owners who might view this as intrusive into their next to their homes. So I want to try to figure out how we have that conversation. I mean, one of the ways that we could do that would be by making these a special use, or by I think Alderman Wilson, you had an idea of maybe inserting some of the language from our some of the, was it vacation rentals or that we might consider. But I would rather have the conversation with neighbors ahead of time. I've had a number of instances in my ward recently, a garage building where garages were built very close and actually blocked the views of adjacent properties. And they were built as of right. So I just want to encourage a little bit more community and neighborhood conversation before a tiny home is built. And I'm absolutely open to hearing what suggestions from the rest of you, because I don't have the answer for that. It may be that special use is too stringent an approach. There may be other alternatives that I'm just not thinking of that you guys have an idea about.
Well, thank you, Alderman Fisk. I did want to point out that I had talked to Ms. Nyden earlier in the day about the 3-foot side yard setback, and to find out a little bit more about why staff was recommending that. And Ms. Nyden sent us all an email about that issue at 4 p.m. So
I haven't seen it.
Okay, so Ms. Nyden, would you like to talk about that a little bit? Because I think there's a little bit of a question as to, is that too small a side yard setback? And what was the discussion at the Plan Commission and the Zoning Committee meetings about that issue? Because it sounds like there was some discussion, and I think it is something that at least one resident has raised with me. So.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So yes, it did come up during the discussion at the Zoning Committee, the Plan Commission, and the Plan Commission. And two things. One, we have quite a number of homes in Evanston that already have a 3-foot side yard setback, quote unquote, naturally occurring. And those homes some of those homes we've seen come through for variances because they want to add additions to their homes. So they're effectively maintaining the 3-foot side yard setback. They're going through a variance, so as Alderman Fisk noted, there is some community information provided. That information is shared, whether it's a minor or major variance, depending on that kind of thing. So people are aware of that. The perception is these are smaller homes, they're smaller buildings, so it's not a regular single-family home being built on these lots. It's a smaller home, so where you may have a closer smaller side yard setback, you have maybe a shorter building, not as much bulk, it's not as big of a building, so it's the side yard setback isn't as intense if it was a larger single-family home, traditional single-family home. And then the other item that came up during the discussion was the fact that these are in some ways on scale to an accessory dwelling unit, coach house, even a garage, and those properties, those accessory uses have a 3-foot side yard setback.
Alderman Wilson, go ahead.
Thanks. And as we're working our way towards the next time it's in front of us, particularly in view of the fact that I think from my perspective, one of the things I want to do is have an as of right category or set of parameters. I did feel like the height allowance seemed a little on the high end of the spectrum for this type of property. the 28 feet is, or 2 stories. That seems like kind of a tall 2 stories is for a quote tiny home. So that seems more in line with the height of a regular house. So I just would like to get a better analysis of the massing and how that's actually going to play out. The other thing might be to consider price point as far as maybe tying that into the as of right kind of idea here, because again, $300,000 is not all that inexpensive, I think, for most people. So that's not, I guess, what I really visualize as a quote unquote tiny home. But I realize we're kind of really actually looking at something in between, what you see in those TV shows or whatever. But just to kind of look at those dimensions, consider the massing, and make sure that we have a better visualization of that as we're choosing what the parameters are going to be for the as of right, and to consider the possibility of bringing that price point into the as of right kinds of conversation.
Any other questions or comments? Alderman Ravel.
Well, when we start talking about the price point, I think these are probably more missing middle as sort of the target audience for these, rather than lower income residents. And so I do support this being a permitted use and something that that we can see in all parts of our community, to make this available throughout our community. I like the fact that we kept the permeable surface requirements unchanged, because that would be another concern of having too much hardscape to, that it might affect the stormwater management for the neighboring properties. But I guess I want to thank Andrew Gallimore for bringing this whole idea forward to try to get it formalized in our zoning code. And I really think this is an important way to provide a greater range of houses in Evanston. So, I mean, I think the height requirement is the same as what we're saying for the ADUs. Is that correct, Johanna?
She says yes.
Sorry, yes, it is.
I was someone who raised and discussed this with Johanna, the 3-foot side yard setback, and then as we were talking, I was realizing, looking at the map, that some of these are very odd shaped lots, and that having a larger setback might make the tiny house impossible to have, or sort of ridiculously narrow. So I think that is something that I understand, and I am somewhat reluctant to have them become special uses, because then the process becomes cumbersome for anyone who wants to move forward with this. And considering that we have approximately 35 lots in Evanston that would meet this definition, I don't think we're going to have a flood of them. And I do think that, as Alderman Rebel says, this is aimed more for the missing middle. And it's, tiny houses are certainly not for everyone, certainly probably not during this winter. But there is a demand for them, and this does provide that niche. And so I think that I'd like to see more information from the staff, but otherwise, I think I agree. I think this is something that we need to move forward on, because those lots are unbuildable. And we've seen the difficulty we've had with some of our unbuildable lots. So this is an opportunity to actually create a dwelling unit that uses those lots. Alderman Fisk? Oh, you're on mute, Judy.
Yeah, Johanna, is it possible to to craft something where we're looking at each lot individually, and rather than having a 3-foot side yard setback, to say within a certain number of feet from an existing neighboring dwelling. I just, again, I don't want to create a situation where neighbors are fighting with neighbors over what's blocking their view out their kitchen window. So I'm just sort of searching for something.
We could certainly think about what that might look. I think I understand what your concerns are, and we've talked about them in regards to other properties. In terms of distance from another property, I think these lots are just so irregular that gets a little challenging in terms of having a buildable lot effectively.
Because a 3-yard setback might be fine on a lot where the tiny house is going to be 10 feet from a principal building on a neighboring lot, for example. But if you have a building that's 3 feet from a property line, and then you're adding another house that's another 3, that's 6 feet. That's that's basically my height plus another foot or another half foot. And that's not very much. That's, and that's just a place where snow is going to gather, where people are going to be concerned about drainage, where, there's just going to be all sorts of issues that could be addressed by looking at them individually. I understand what everybody says about the special uses, and I understand that. I think that's right. But I think we've got to figure this out. On the map, there are none of these in my ward, but I've had a lot of experience over the past year or two with situations exactly like this, and I know how frustrating it is for residents, and I want to be sensitive to that.
Well, Alderman Fisk, I recognize what you're saying. I would think that anyone who wants to build one of these efficiency houses on one of these lots would probably want to have the most space, have the biggest side yard setback on both sides that they could possibly have, because just for their own advantage. But there might be some instance in which it's possible to have that 3-foot setback and it doesn't have a negative impact on the neighboring property.
Sure, right, and that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Is that if we can figure out a way, as we're looking at these irregularly shaped lots, how we can achieve both goals of allowing the tiny house, but also giving some respite to the adjacent property owners, if that's what they want. Maybe they don't care, but
I think if people have been living next to one of these small lots and it hasn't been built on, they probably have been enjoying the open space. So I think the city will end up with people not always liking the change. But, if it does allow for 35 households to move into Evanston in these type of housing, I think it's a good for the community. Change is hard. I will also say, I live in a house, a 100-year-old house that is built 3 feet from the lot line, and my neighbor to the south house is from 1903, and it is about 3.5 feet from the lot line. So I do live probably less than 8 feet from my wonderful neighbor to the south. It makes good neighbors. Okay, so seeing no other hands, we need to vote on this for introduction. Ms. Nyden, would you call the roll?
Alderman Fisk?
Aye.
Alderman Nguyen?
Aye.
Alderman Wilson?
Aye.
Alderman Sufferton?
Aye.
Alderman Ravel?
Aye.
And Alderman Rainey?
Aye.
Ayes have it. Motion passes.
All right. With that, we have concluded our agenda, and we shall adjourn, and the council meeting is set to start at, can we have the council start at, let's have the council start at 6 o'clock, so we don't surprise anybody.
That's good.
Okay. All right, 6 o'clock, everyone. See you in a few minutes. Thank you, staff. Thank you, everyone.
Alderman, is there going to be a motion?
You need a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second? Do we need to call the roll for that one? Okay. We are adjourned.